You had always hated April the 1st. Even as a kid, when you had that mischievous energy, you could never prank anyone well enough. As you grew older, your distaste for the holiday grew. All your life you had struggled with telling what is or is not a joke, or sarcasm. Oh, so, thankfully, this one day in the whole year was centered around just that, making fun of people and tricking them. Hell, you couldn't do what you typically do on a day that you didn't like and watch things on the internet, as people on there had also taken to the holiday, and you were more likely to get rickrolled and scared by screamers 15 times in a row rather than anything else. You had left your dorm room for breakfast, but you had noticed that the door you had to go through was slightly ajar. Images of a classic bucket of water prank sprung to your mind and your stomach churned. You'd never seen that prank in the flesh before, and you were not willing to find out what it felt like to be a cartoon character. So, empty-handed and empty-stomached, you returned to your room and stayed there. Laying on your bed, you began to plan what you would do from here. The most likely scenario seemed to be that you'd stay here, do nothing, and eventually fall asleep so this day was finally over. But, as predictable as it was, you were outrageously bored and frustrated, your stomach roaring for food. After the third sheet of paper that you ate out of pure boredom and a desperate but failing attempt to fill your stomach, a knock at the door sounded. "Oh, God," you grumbled softly to yourself, picturing Kaminari, Sarah, or some other one of that group waiting outside your room, stifling giggles as they prepared something to prank you. It could be a game of ding-dong ditch. It could be clear plastic wrap in front of the door. Or it could be a handshake from the living joy buzzer himself. Whatever it was, you were not in the mood. "What do you want?" you complained to the door as whoever was behind it knocked again.
"I want to know if you're alright."
That wasn't Kaminari or Sarah. It was one of the students that you felt that you could trust, especially on this day of all days. Desperate for something to do that didn't involve you getting pranked, you opened the door, revealing the tall, six-armed boy. Shoji looked you up and down, then spoke again.
"It's 10:30 a.m. and you haven't come down to eat anything. I began to worry, so I came here. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting something."
No, it's fine. You let out a small sigh, rubbing the back of your neck absent-mindedly. "You really don't need to worry about me like that, Shoji." You motioned to let him inside your room and sat down on your bed, patting the space beside you. "Besides, how do you know I didn't just sleep in? It is a Saturday after all."
"While it is a plausible scenario,"
he continued as he walked inside and sat next to you on your bed,
"I do remember you going to sleep around your regular time, and it was unlikely that you'd stay in bed that long if you had woken up at 7 a.m. like usual. And even if you did sleep in, you would have come down for food half an hour ago at the latest."
You chuckled softly, nudging him playfully. "That mind of yours, like a steel trap, isn't it?"
"I'm just good at what I do,"
he replied, shrugging lightly. He said that so often that it sounded like Tokoyami's famous "revelry in the dark" line. Usually when you tried to compliment him, that line would be spoken. You knew he did appreciate it, but sometimes you wished he'd show it more, even though he wouldn't be comfortable with doing so. It was always hard for you to understand what he was thinking, but he always knew what you were thinking, and exactly how to make you smile.
"What's scaring you?"
His voice pierced through your thoughts after a while of comfortable silence, and you were reminded of how much you considered the fact he might be telepathic. "You know what day it is, right?" Of course, you knew the answer to that. Shoji was a knowledgeable person, and was quick to memorize what he discovered, as well as recognize patterns.
Why are you frightened of April Fools? It's all harmless pranks. Do you not find them amusing?
You knew that was his opinion on the holiday. Like on many things, he was neutral towards April Fool's Day itself, although Shoji was a bit annoyed at some of his more stubborn classmates' attempts to get him to laugh at a joke or prank on someone else, or himself. Well, yes and no. You shifted uncomfortably, beginning to explain your distaste for the holiday. It's just hard to trust people on this kind of day dedicated to pranking people, especially when you struggle to tell when someone is sarcastic or not daily. I can't even avoid people using the internet, even that's too risky. Shoji hummed softly as he patiently listened to your explanations of various anecdotes of you being tricked, or when you suspect yourself of being deceived, long after you fell for it and didn't realize.
You should still eat. I do not want you to starve.
Shoji spoke, standing up and beckoning for you to join him. You were about to interject, suspect that he didn't hear a word you said.
Don't worry. I'll make sure any pranks coming your way will never touch you. We can spend today at the park or at the library, where no one would set up these acts of mischief.
The light-haired boy kept true to his promise as the two of you walked out of your room, with his right wing of arms wrapped around you, and the left stretched out, listening, looking, and speaking to, or about, any danger that came your way. When you went to the door that frightened you hours before, you froze, unsure of what to do now. Without saying a word, Shoji extended the eye on the end of one of his arms, peering around the door.
You're right. A classic bucket prank,
he observed, transforming the eye into a hand and pushing open the door, having the bucket pathetically dump out its contents onto the floor. "Aw, come on!" Mina's whiny voice rang in the distance as you two stepped over the puddle and into the common room. You heard the quietest of scoffs from the man who embraced you, and you empathized with his frustrations. As much as you both wanted to leave and not have to deal with these childish people, there still was the issue of you not having eaten. So Shoji led you to the kitchen to rectify that issue. When Sarah was setting a whoopee cushion down on your chair as you prepared your breakfast, the black-haired boy was met with a silent, harsh glare and was quickly scared off. You did notice this, and you smirked a little, happy to see the guy get what he deserved, but when you came back to the table, Shoji smiled gently at you from beneath his mask, as if nothing had happened. When Kaminari approached the two of you with his hand outstretched and a trail of people behind him that had electrified hair standing on end, he too was sent back with the same sharp look, as well as a hushed threat from your companion.
Don't you dare.
You snuggled into him, a wave of relief washing over you as the human stun gun backed away fearfully, his eyes silently begging Shoji not to kill him. Your classmates soon caught the hint that you were not meant to be messed with, and avoided the two of you as you walked out of the kitchen and towards the exit. Your heart buzzed lightly. It felt so beautiful to finally be left alone on a day like this. If only I had Shoji last year, or even the year before that, you fantasized about how incredible that would have been. Maybe then you'd actually look forward to the beginning of April. Unfortunately, not everyone got the memo that you and Shoji weren't interested in being pranked today. Well, maybe they did get it, but didn't care about two people's feelings. You had only just started to feel calm and peaceful, and as if nothing could touch you in that tight embrace. But then, with a roar like thunder, a beast jumped out from nowhere, its arms out in a threatening pose, ready to grab you. You screamed, jumping back, stumbling, and falling to your knees. You tried to fight it. By God, you tried so hard to fight back the tears that were starting to well up in your eyes. But you couldn't stop them, and a sob shook your shoulders. April Fools! From where the monster stood, Uraraka's voice sounded, cheerfully sounding a sing-song version of the phrase you dreaded. You looked up, the image of the girl removing a mask from her face blurred by your tears, and you saw her face twist into one of pure guilt.
Wait! Are you... Oh God! Traveler! I'm so sorry,
Uraraka.
Shoji growled, and you heard a soft gulp of fear escape the mouth of the intense but well-meaning girl. All you could do was watch as your protector glared daggers at Uraraka, but his face softened slightly.
It's about time you are made aware that they don't like April Fool's Day.
They don't?
Uraraka chimed, and you felt the gaze of your classmates crawl along your back. You knew they were watching you, eager to find out why. You knew your sweet, loving friend was going to ask you why you didn't enjoy the holiday she loved, but before you or she could say anything, you hiccuped with another sob, and Shoji quickly scooped you up, the webbing between his arms holding you like a soft, warm hammock.
Yes, I ask that you all leave Traveler alone when it comes to pranks on this day.
He didn't even bother to explain why. Holding you tightly and close to his chest, he pushed past the girl, and you were free. For all of that long day, Shoji was still his quiet and protective self, drying your tears and making sure that he was keeping you feeling safe and warm in his hug. He made it confident that when you were with him, no one made you feel uncomfortable or distrustful. He always worked his hardest to make you feel like that around him. For once, you felt like you could see right into his mind the way he could do with yours. You knew Shoji loved you, and that he cared for you. So much. Even if he didn't know how to show it all the time. To Shoji, you were no different from an innocent civilian, trapped under rubble and begging for his help. Even though you could defend yourself from villains, it was hard to protect against the toughness of social bonds from your friends and classmates. All at once, you knew how much it tore him up, to see you anxious and stressed about a single day of the year, to see you cry when a girl in a mask jumped out at you, yelling the equivalent of "boo." You knew how much it hurt him to see you cry. Period. If he had the power, you were sure that he'd erase April Fool's Day from the calendar altogether, with no hesitation. If only to make it so that you felt safe forever.